Hi, welcome to Conversation Corner. I'm Jack Hathaway, Norfolk's Town Administrator, and I welcome you to our January edition. I'm joined, as usual, by Chairman of the Board, Mr. Jim Lehan. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Jack.
It's, we've gotten to the cold part of winter, and looks like a little worried that we're having a repeat of last year. We got the end of January snowstorm coming, and but it sounds like this one's scaled down a little bit. So, but
Unless you're in Washington, D.C., where both plows are going to be working.
yeah,
They're supposed to get over 2 feet.
and 2 inches for them is, like you said, is a trouble. But,
yeah, that it is.
So we've had a busy month. We've just come off the special election for the ballot question regarding the debt exclusion for the public safety project, and I know you said it in the newspaper, and we both wanted to say thank you to everybody for supporting that. We thank everybody for participating in the process. There was a lot of good, healthy discussion, and we are very thankful that the town, in the end, supported this project, and now we will make it a reality.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand why some people voted no.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully not because they don't like the police or fire, but you know, I understand how folks have concerns over taxes. I live here too. I understand. Yep. And $300 or $200 or whatever it is a year is meaningful to people, and yep. So I respect either way the privilege of folks to vote yes or no. I'm certainly grateful it's yes, because the facility is desperately needed. It built in 1966. It's older than the Centennial School, which we tore down because it was no longer functional. Yeah. We have not invested in public safety for a long, long time in town, and so personally, I'm grateful. People sometimes don't understand the role of the selectmen. We don't get to make any of these decisions. You know, our role is to bring forward what we think is in the best interest of the town, and it may even be in contradiction to what our personal views are. You know, I mean, we get to vote whichever way we want, just as everyone else does. But you know, at least my view of the role is that we have to separate that, and that my role is to bring forward, as one of three, what I honestly believe to serve the overall best interest of the town, and this facility does overall serve the best interest of the town. And we've been working on this for 8 years. Yeah. I know Chuck would claim 20, because I know he's been on the crusade for 20, but you've been part of the committee. We've been actively engaged in trying to solve this problem for a good 8 years.
So we were successful, and now, so we wanted to give people just a little bit of a feel for what the process is currently going on, and then talk about what the steps coming up are. And I apologize ahead of time here. I think I'm starting to fight a little bit of a cold, so if I sneeze in the middle of the show, I apologize to you and the people at home.
Well, you certainly should apologize to me, because I'm the one that's next to you.
I'll fight it as best I can. So as we've talked about in the past, we've already hired a project manager for this project. We have CDR McGuire, and we've also hired our architect. We have Brian Humes from Jakunsky Humes, a Connecticut firm, and they are, in my opinion anyway, doing a great job so far. They've given us rough cost estimates based on square footage and recent projects similar projects that have gone out to bid and been constructed. And at this point now we have floor plans, we have some very simple elevations, and so now the Public Safety Committee is going to meet with the architect again on this coming Monday, and we will start going full head of steam at coming up with construction documents and going out to bid. You know, hopefully probably about 3 months from now we'll go out to bid and start construction. I would imagine probably late summer, very early fall, if the timing follows what we think it is.
There's it's an opportunity to maybe clear up some misconceptions or misinformation that's out there concerning this project. One, the override will not exceed $12.2 billion. That's a commitment. The estimates that we have aren't just pulled out of the air. They're rather detailed estimates based on people that do this for a living. Mm-hmm. They're also aggressive in their estimates. We've taken a number that we think is above what it'll actually come in at. So we're hopeful that it might even be less. Yep. But it will not be more. And if the bids come back different than what we anticipate, then we'll have to make adjustments accordingly, because it will not be over $12.2 billion. Another misconception is that we're going to spend all the money on the police station and not have enough left for the fire station. That is absolutely not true. We're going to get accurate estimates for both buildings, make adjustments appropriately to the two different facilities to make sure that they are equal in terms of need and that both are sufficiently funded. Even though we'll be building the police station first, and the logic for that is so that they can move and then we can rehabilitate the fire station and without having to move the fire guys. This is going to be a project where both are equally funded. One will not be at the expense of the other, and I know there's some folks that have claimed that, and it's just absolutely not true.
Yeah, absolutely. We have two different departments, and we want them both to be successful. So there's no simpler way of saying it, I guess. So that, as we said, that'll we'll start that project, the police station, and which will also house the regional communication center, the dispatch center, and which will service Norfolk, Franklin, Rentham, and Plainville. They will be a tenant of the town of Norfolk.
Right, and mention that the funding for that project is not part of the 12.2.
Correct.
Right, that's by a state grant.
Yep. Yeah. So we just prepare the space, basically just give them a floor and four walls, and then they construct their facility, and they will pay us. You and I are working on that. Need to get back to that, but we're working on that lease with some of the other town administrators, and but we expect $50,000 to $60,000 of annual income, and we've already built in an escalator, so we think that will help pay off the 1.8 million portion of the debt. So one thing you had mentioned. It's just our history with projects, not just the two of us, but the town of Norfolk. We've had a very good history, and something we're proud of, and we want people to have some confidence in that.
Yeah, we have. We've had two schools, well, really three if you count the addition. 3 schools, town hall, library. We've had a number of projects, and not a single project under the control of the town of Norfolk has ever come in over budget. In fact, several of them have come in under budget, most recently the Freeman Kennedy School, which shortly we will be receiving somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million that will go directly back to the taxpayers in reducing debt. So the only project I'm aware of that we're affiliated with was, some of you may remember the high school had to do some rebidding because they ran into some issues associated with asbestos in the old school and things of that nature. But projects that have been managed by the town of Norfolk have never come in over budget.
Yeah. Yeah, so we expect this one to follow that trend.
Yeah, it will follow suit.
And these will be, there won't be, there's not a lot of site work to do on these.
Right.
There's some site work at the public safety building to the right, but really there's no site work to do at the new police station, and there's no, there's a brand new facility building there that we need to upgrade, but we don't have to worry about taking down a wall and finding old asbestos or anything like that. So that's that's some of the big unknowns that you can run into that we don't have. So.
Well, Millicent, who recently passed a new public safety facility, no sooner they start digging than they found they had a landfill issue.
Yeah.
And their costs have gone up substantially because they didn't anticipate it. We don't have those issues. And these are not going to be Taj Mahal buildings.
Nope.
Another rumor out there. There are state requirements for the police station in terms of what has to be there. And of course, you have to be compliant with ADA and all of those considerations. So some of that, which doesn't exist in our current facility, has to be built in. But these will not be excessive buildings in any way, shape, or form. And we will have room for expansion. So it will meet our future needs, not just the immediate needs.
Excuse me. All right. So
you going to hang in there?
I'm good.
Okay.
Just so the REC, the Regional Communication Center, REC we call it. Sometimes we call it Metacomet. It has a lot of different names. It's the Metacomet Regional Dispatch Center. That is now gearing up and going to start going full speed as well. That has really been in a holding pattern for probably close to a year now, while we've that facility and those folks, which we are part of, have been waiting for Norfolk to have a building to deliver to them. So now that we know we're going to have a building, they're going to continue their work. They are farther down the path as far as designing their space. It's a much simpler space because they just need a dispatch area and a server room and a couple small offices. But they're ready to go So that board of directors, which is the 4 town administrators, will meet next, I guess, February 2nd. And I've already had conversations with the state 911 after they were very happy to see our debt exclusion pass.
Yeah, that wasn't a shallow comment that, or a hollow comment, I should say, regarding the potential loss of rec if this had
Yeah.
failed. We were most definitely at risk of having this fall apart.
Yeah.
It not only solves an imminent need that we have here in town, but it also preserves basically 4 years of work in regionalizing this. And you can probably confirm better than I, but I hear there are other towns that, as this continues now to grow, that I hear some other towns have expressing interest in joining this rec in future years too. So that's exciting.
Yeah. No, we've had some abutting towns, through their department heads, et cetera, reach out to us. So it hasn't, we haven't had formal conversations at the selectman level, but department heads certainly realize the potential here.
That would be great.
Yeah, and it should be, relatively, I say that, it should be relatively easy to add communities. There's a lot of that goes on behind the scenes, obviously, but it certainly will be easier than the startup. I think one of the things we want to talk about a little bit too was operational budgets.
We're kind of using this format, if you will, I guess, to provide facts, I think, to folks, because through this whole process of the public safety facility, I've seen and heard, and people have said to me things that just aren't accurate. And everyone's entitled to their own judgment and conclusion, but hopefully we can at least give you some facts, and whatever conclusions you draw from them are yours to do, but we want to provide some facts. And one of the comments I've heard is that we don't spend within our means. That's about as far from the truth as you can get.
Yeah.
We have never spent a dime over what is within our means, and in fact every year have spent less than what we've been appropriating. So, and just to give you an example, the Board of Selectmen really only manage a very small portion of the budget, very small portion. If you think of it in 4 basic components, you've got the schools, which is King Philip and the elementary school. You've got fixed costs, which we have some control over to a certain degree, but only portions of it, healthcare being one. Insurance, really, we have minimal control over. We have Norfolk County Retirement, we have no control over. We have the Aggie School, we have no control over. Tri-County, we have no control. And we can go on and on. But you take out the fixed costs in the education, and the local government component is really a very, very small portion, less than a third of the operational budget. So 2/3 of the budget is outside of the Board of Selectmen's control. And what's within our control is the library, public safety, police, fire, town hall, the DPW, that's basically what's in our budget. And that's really been a very small portion of the overall operational budget. But every year we have returned excess on our budgets. Since, I think, 5 years now ago, we went a long time with only $600,000 and change in our stabilization fund. We now have $1.2 million. So we've taken the underspending, if you will, and we haven't spent it.
Yep.
We have spent it on snow and ice, I will grant that, but most of it has gone into the stabilization fund. And as I say, we're now up to $1.2 million. That's important. We did that intentionally because we knew we were funding projects, or hopefully funding projects, and bond ratings influence the rates we pay. And our bond ratings have gone up twice in that period of time. Other towns have struggled to maintain them, where ours has gone up, and that's saved us substantial interest on these projects, and will for the public safety building as well. The only debt we really have on the books today is really mostly schools. There's a little bit left on the library, but it's the middle school, the high school, and of course the Freeman Kennedy School. That's the debt book for the town of Norfolk. That's all we've got. It's enough. I'm not suggesting it isn't enough.
Big projects,
but we haven't spent anything on the government side, in terms of debt in some time. Public safety will be the first in quite a while. So we've worked hard to really manage things. Our state aid is still below what it was, and I believe, if not quite there, but I think we're still might be about even now.
Yeah, the
Pretty
2001?
2008, I was thinking. Yeah, that's when it took a dip. We even had a state aid reduction halfway through 2008. I think it was 2008, and we had to hold a January town meeting and make cuts in the budget because we can't spend over what we have, if you will. We can't deficit spend any of these accounts. So, well, the one account we can is snow and ice, but aside from that, we can't deficit spend any of that. So we've worked very hard to keep the integrity of our financials an open book. Our audits have been outstanding. We don't have any issues associated with that. In fact, when I met with the auditors, they made a comment that we had some checks and balances that they don't normally see in a small town like Norfolk, because we're not a big town and we're not heavily staffed. On the government side, the only two additions that we've made of any meaningful consideration is we've brought in a human resource head and we've brought in a planner. Both of those are long overdue and are critical. I mean, we're not a mom and pop store anymore. We're a major business. People, having come from the corporate world where human resources, we never really enjoyed them, but I wouldn't want their job. Dealing with all of the union contracts, health insurance issues, and all of that fall under human resources, and they're a full-time job, big time, and I'm thankful that we have that position. And the planner has, we're all volunteers, and all of our boards are volunteers, and the planner brings a level of professionalism around our whole permitting and planning process that we've not had and been lacking. So both of those positions have created a lot more efficiencies and just a better working environment, I guess is a good way to say it, than certainly not having them. Most of the surrounding towns have resources of like that and have for some time. We've been lacking, and so we're really thrilled to have those two spots filled. Yeah,
I agree 100%. Both of them are critical additions, and I think the one thing that I like to say about the planner is really got us from a reactionary role.
Well said.
The planning board, and actually has allowed the planning board, both he as an individual contributor and then also helping the planning board do more planning for the future, and so that we're not constantly in a reactionary mode. So it's been very helpful.
And we struggle, there's always that dilemma about new development, new growth. It's a critical component of our revenue source. I know there's been a lot of Southwood is still on the table of discussion if we can work through some of the remaining issues. We're trying very hard to weigh the pros and cons, the impact to the community as well as the potential revenue to the community. If we can work those out, we would only recommend going forward if we felt it was on the financially good side of the equation. So we'll see how that all works out, but we can't turn our back on those opportunities. All too often when you turn your back on things you can manage, you end up with something you can't manage. And so we stay actively engaged in those things. But overall, these have not been easy years, but a lot of people have worked very hard to make things come out in a positive way and stay stable, if you will.
Yeah.
So moving on maybe into a little bit of the tax issue, which of course was on everyone's mind when it comes to public safety in the building, that is. Certainly understandable. I know you have some charts. Why don't you start with those, Jack?
I do. I have some charts that are probably a little overwhelming, but they're interesting. At least to me, they are. So, Chris, thank you. That's this is the first, and this is the worst one. So we're going to start. This is showing a bunch of towns in our area and the tax rate going from 2007 up to 2016. And I've got, just so people can tell, I got Holliston, Hopkinton, Medfield, Medway, Millis, Norfolk, Plainville. I also have the Plainville commercial rate, Rentham, and then the Rentham commercial rate. And I guess really what I want people to focus on here is looking at that dark green line in the middle with the yellow dots on each year's tax rate. That's the Norfolk rate, and so it just shows that we're in the middle of the pack. For those, that's I didn't include Walpole and I didn't include Franklin because I didn't think they were very comparable to us. I don't think we necessarily compare poorly to them, but I tried to put towns in here that were a little more residential and similar to us. So I was pleased to see this and see that our tax rate is moving along with those. I think you will notice that the Norfolk rate just in the last year is a little upward trending more than the other ones, and that's because we had a reimbursement from the School Building Authority for the old H. Olive Day project, and so in 2015 we still had a debt payment to make, but we had the reimbursement, so that was really it was close to a net impact to us on the tax rate in 2014. And then in 2015, we had finished paying off the debt, but still had that $325,000 reimbursement. So that artificially brought our tax rate in 2015 down by $325,000. And then, so when you look at the change from 15 to 16, it looks like our rate is going up more than it normally would have, and that's because, again, we had that reimbursement in 15 that was the last year of that payment from the SBA. If we go to the next slide, Chris, we have just Norfolk and Rentham tax rates. And again, you can see that trend that I just talked about, but Norfolk is in the middle there. The Rentham commercial rate is up at the top, and then their Rentham residential rate is in the bottom. And what they've been able to do, because their decision that they have made is, you can see that residential rate is trending down, and that's because they've got the Rentham outlets and some other commercial, and they've put more of the burden up on the commercial rate and been able to take some of that pressure off the residential rate. It's something we may be able to do someday, but I think we're a long way away from, we want to continue to attract commercial development over the next few years, and if we go into a split rate situation, we will certainly not be attracting. The last slide that I have for the graphs is Norfolk, Holliston, and Hopkinton. Holliston is on the top, and actually I was surprised when I saw this. I thought we would, I didn't think we would compare favorably to Holliston. I know Holliston pretty well, and it's very residential, but then they have Route 16 going through the center of town, and that's just miles of commercial and industrial development that you would think would help their tax rate, but it for whatever reason doesn't. And their tax rate is up at 1879 compared to us at 1808. I think you'll see that my guess is the last couple of years they've come down a little bit because their property rate, their values have gone up. They've had some appreciation, and I think we probably trend a little bit behind them in rebounding. So you'll see their rate coming down. The other one is Hopkinton, and they're at 1703 today, but again, they are much more commercial and industrial than Norfolk is. Comparable, but I know you're going to talk about the revenue that the towns have, and maybe we can go over to that slide on the next one, Chris.
Yeah, the next slide, we pulled from the Department of Revenue the different tax rates, and we picked towns that were somewhat near us, but we also picked some towns which are very similar to us. The state ranks communities in what they call an in-kind grouping. They do it for schools as well, where they have similar demographics, similar residentials, just towns that kind of reflect each other. And you can see Norfolk up there at 1808, and you folks can read down. The highest is Bolton, which is $20.91. Bolton is very much like Norfolk, very residential, very low commercial. The lowest rate is Dover, $12.88, and Dover has really no commercial to amount to anything. They're all residential. The reason their property rate, that rate is so low, is their home evaluations are probably 50% higher than the town of Norfolk. And I know we've talked about it many times, and we won't go through the formula again, but the two variables obviously are, one of the key variables in this is the evaluations. It is the valuations. How much is your property worth collectively in the community? But as you go down there, you'll see that we're pretty much in the middle of the pack. Norfolk has about 93% residential. Other towns similar to us, Medfield is 94% residential. Medway is actually got quite a bit more commercial. Millis is 90% residential. Sherburne is 95% residential. You get into some of the other towns. Holliston actually is 87% residential. So you're right. There's quite a bit of commercial on Route 16. If you can go to the next slide, Chris. That sheet I just showed is all single rate towns. They charge commercial and residential the same rate. Some of the communities in our area have split rates, and this will give you a feel for how they can sort of keep the residential rate down by putting a higher burden on the commercial side. And some of them were quite surprising to me. Canton, for example, residential rate of $12.79, but the commercial rate is $26.36. Towns near us, Milford, Mansfield, you can see they all have, Milford was surprising as well, almost $30.
Yeah.
commercial rate, and their residential is 17. So that one really did surprise me. Plainville is just gone to a split rate because of the racetrack and some of the other the lows and the other considerations that are down there in the Plainville area on Route 1. This surprised me as well. Plainville is now 67% residential based.
Wow.
They've got a huge chunk of commercial now. But you look down there, Rentham on the bottom, Rentham is 74% residential based. So you can tell they have a significant chunk of commercial. Of course, the outlets are the key. And they have an 1856 commercial rate. Westwood was another one that surprised me, 1466 and 2827. Those are very, very high numbers.
Yeah, that University Ave. That's,
yeah, Walpole. So when you have the benefit of a large commercial base, which really has to be probably more than 15%, otherwise you're just going to push all the commercial business right out of town, you have the ability to do a split rate, and it benefits the residents, no question. There's a significant benefit. We're just not at this particular time, and I'm not sure if we ever will be at a point where we can do a split rate without chasing everybody away. The next slide I wanted to share, there are several folks have commented about some of the other towns. One that I saw on Facebook today actually was Chatham. Someone referenced the town of Chatham. And their tax rate is about $5 and some odd cents if I recall. If you look at the Cape Cod towns, and I took a look at them today, and you can pull this up, by the way, from the Department of Revenue webpage, all of the towns in the state of Massachusetts. Almost all of the Cape towns have a single-digit tax rate, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have a home down there in Dennis. It's, I think, $8 and some odd cents in Dennis, somewhere in that range. But they're all single-digit. There's a reason for it. And the reason really is quite simple. Most of these towns have very, very high valuations, number one. And number two, they have a high percentage of their homes which are secondary homes. So there's a property tax associated, what's the term for it? And I pay it. You think I remember it. It's a tax on the home as being a second home, additional tax. Sorry. But what really drives it are the valuations. And so Norfolk, our valuation, our total valuation, all of our property is worth $1.6 billion. Town of Chatham's property is worth $6.2 billion. Do the math. Yeah. When you have valuations of that nature, when you spend less than 20% on your schools, where we pay 60% on our schools, and the reason's simple, they have a lot of non-residents who have homes there, you can afford a tax rate of 585 when you have that type of valuations. But if you look closer to home, look at Foxborough at 2.8, Holliston, all of these towns have a higher valuation than the town of Norfolk, and it's who we are. We're a small residential community, and so it's not a surprise, but that number is significant in that it drives the tax rate.
In Medfield, $2.5 billion.
Yeah, Medfield 2.5. So that's the other part of the equation that sometimes we never get to share. And it is clearly what drives it. So you can't take a Norfolk and compare it to a Chatham. I actually looked through their material, and they have more revenue associated with water, boat excise taxes and things of that nature than we have across the board. But that's just the way it is. And we are who we are. I guess we could try and tax the canoes on the Charles River, but I don't think it's going to help us a lot. We are who we are, and it's part of why I think people live here and why they enjoy the community, and it isn't going to change a whole lot.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it before. We're both optimistic that the tax rate will go down. We saw that when I first, not from anything that I did, but when I first started here in 2003, the tax rate was, I want to say in the $15, and it dropped down over the next couple of years down into the $13. And that was not because we stopped spending money, it was because the values and the homes rose, and that tax rate went down. And I can't predict the future, and I don't know if the election will have anything to do with it. But we'll see how the economy does, and if property values continue to rise, we'll see that tax rate come back down a little bit.
Yeah, it's just there are things that are within our power to manage, and there are things that are outside of our ability to manage. We do our very best to manage those that are within our control. We don't overspend our budgets. We don't have excessive contracts. If you look at the average salaries of, well, I could pick on you, but you're below the median on town administrators. You know, we are who we are, and we manage that carefully. The part we can't control is valuations of property and things of that nature. It's out of our control. You know, if we could, the more homes sell for, the better we are. But we have great schools, we have great services, and we've made a conscious effort to maintain those. We have probably on the governmental side, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I think the largest increases on the governmental side, they're certainly not in town hall or library or any of the other departments, or DPW for that matter. They have been in public safety.
Yep.
And we've made a conscious effort to transition our public safety. We had layoffs in the early 2000s, and we've worked hard to replace those layoffs and to get our staffing up to where it needs to be. But on the fire side, because we have introduced ALS capability, the county, Norfolk County has very specific requirements on how you can be staffed. They're non-negotiable. And so we have minimum staffings that we have to maintain. And we have invested in that. Because we know ALS is something that saves lives, and I will defend it every day. I just think it's a wonderful service. So we have made investments there that are above sort of the traditional 3% or 3.5% increases that you see normally in governmental budgets. But those have leveled off because we're at the staffing requirements now, and well, I guess I'm kind of belaboring it now, but we've worked hard at making sure that our public safety officials had the manpower and the resources they needed to do their job.
Yep, and you know, there's still, we've been through it before, and I guess it's, to me, and I know you agree, it's worth going over again. I mean, it just, the history of ALS, you know, and that's a story that's easy to tell, so that's why I like to tell it. You know, we brought ALS in. Jack McFeely, as we've all talked about in the past, was a big part of that. We brought ALS in, and we did that because we had ALS at Southwood, but Southwood closed. No longer had those ambulances there, but then we had ALS ambulances available to us. Wasn't ideal, but available to us at Norwood Hospital, and they went out of the business of providing ALS service. So that's why it was critical that we provided ALS, because otherwise, you still look at towns, and some of the M towns that are north.
We like to say the M towns.
That are north of us.
Millis and Medfield are two examples.
Yeah, they don't have advanced life support. So if you have and cardiac is the poster child. If you have a cardiac event, sometimes you're waiting 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get to advanced life support ambulance there from out of town, and it can mean the difference of life and death, as we all know. So it's. You know, there is an expense that comes along with that, but there's also the value of being able to save lives, and our folks have saved. You know, they've had hundreds of cardiac events. And
you were one of them.
And you can argue that they've saved hundreds of lives. I was one of them.
You were one of them.
I was stupid enough to drive myself to the hospital, but they were very helpful to me, despite that. Cole won't let me live that down.
Nor should he.
Yeah, you know.
Well, I think we've, I hope we haven't bored everybody with this, but I do think it's important to get facts out there. I know that when you win an election by 45 votes, there are obviously a number of people that were very concerned about the additional taxes, and rightfully so.
Yep.
Rightfully so. So I said earlier, I don't begrudge a vote either way. I believe in the democratic system, and you know, it is what it is, but I am certainly grateful that it passed, but I'm very understanding of why people felt uncomfortable with voting for it. And but we do everything we can to manage our expenses. We stay within our budget. We stay within the 2.5 limit. We haven't asked for a dime more, and we're not going to.
Right.
We will operate within those limitations. So we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely. So I had a couple of little things. Any more about the budget that you want to talk about? I know
probably more than they want.
we are getting
to the budget season.
We're in the budget season. The department heads are all working on their budgets. I know the school is in full budget mode, and so are the department heads. So it's good. It's a fun time of year. So we'll begin that process in February and March. If people that are interested in the budget, those are the kind of the key months when we meet with both the selectmen and then we go meet with the advisory boards and answer a lot of questions, talk about goals that we're trying to accomplish, talk about the challenges that we face. So if people are interested in the budget, that's really a good time to participate. Let me just shut my phone off.
That would be good. One other comment on the budget, because I know in the past people have been critical of the schools in terms of their excess spending and things of that nature. And one could probably say that about any department in any given year if they so choose. So it's not just the schools. But I will say that the last several years in working with the schools, they have been extremely good partners in working through the financials. Their budgets have been very well thought out. They've been very reasonable. They've been willing to work with us, and I include King Philip in this discussion, to come up with reasonable numbers. This year, the elementary school returned $150,000 roughly of free cash to the town. So they've been good business partners. And our enrollment has been stable. You know, we haven't had huge increases, although there was a spurt. I think Ingrid said she had like 40 unanticipated kindergartners show up one year, and we had to add,
Half
I
of
think,
them were
100.
your grandchildren, I think, weren't they?
Not half, but anyway, we had to add, I think, $100,000 midway through to their budget, but that certainly was not part of her crystal ball. There was no way of foreseeing that. But they have been very good business partners.
I would give huge kudos to Dr. Lardy, Ingrid. She has been a great partner.
Yeah, and KP too. You know, and I think the change that we voted in town meeting, which allows them to do their budget a little bit later in the year as opposed to earlier, which always I think was a consternation to all of us, will be a good thing. And I know we have a meeting coming up on Tuesday for the preliminary budget with King Philip that you and I are going to.
Yep.
But they have worked well with us as well.
While we're talking about King Philip, I know the field was done last fall, and it's beautiful. If people have a chance to go over and see it, it's obviously at the football stadium. I like to call it the field hockey stadium, but it's a beautiful, beautiful field. Came in under budget, and is really nice. And I know now they're trying to come up with some ways to renovate or rebuild the concession stand, but they're going to try and do that outside of the operating budget and find donations, etc. But it really is it's a beautiful field. It came out very nice.
If folks at home have any questions on the financials or the budget or anything that we can help with, any of the selectmen, I mean, we're all equal in this process and with an equal base of knowledge. So if they want to give any of us a call, Mr. Palumbo, Mr. Bugby, or myself, feel free. We'll do the best we can. If we don't know, we'll tell you that too.
Yep.
But don't hesitate.
The other two things I just wanted to talk about real quick was we are attending the Mass Municipal Association conference this weekend. We'll go into Boston. There'll be literally hundreds and hundreds of selectmen, town administrators, other financial people, along with Governor Baker will be there giving a speech. Actually, I think we have our 2 U.S. senators attending. It's always an interesting weekend. It's kind of our one conference of the year that we attend, and it's very interesting. A lot of vendors there, trade show that typically you see at these things.
Yeah, the real advantage, I think, having gone to it now a lot of years, is just having chances to talk with other selectmen who are dealing with similar issues like we're dealing with, and you know, we're not looking for any gold stars for creativity. We'll steal any good idea we can, and it's a good opportunity to get some information and share ideas with other selectmen. That's what I've found it to be of great value. The seminars are usually pretty good, and it's informative. We learn. That's
Absolutely.
a good thing.
And then the last thing is just we have a retirement coming up next week that I talked a little bit about at town meeting, but just wanted to thank Julie Shefko, our town accountant, for her 20 years of service. Julie will be leaving us and becoming a full-time grandmother and wife. She and her husband Ron will be enjoying their retirement together, but I think they're going to relocate down to where their grandchildren are and enjoy that stage of their life. So Julie will be greatly missed. She's a good friend and tireless worker.
And an outstanding talent.
Who really, she treated the, I don't know, this doesn't sounds funny the way I said it, but she treats the town's money like it's her money. She doesn't, if anybody's doing anything that she's not sure about, she is on them as she should be, and she has the respect of all the department heads and other people in town, and we will miss her, and both her and her work. So thank you, Julie, and enjoy that retirement. It's greatly deserved.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Lehan. As always, this is easy to do with you. Appreciate it, and I hope people have enjoyed the information we tried to share. As I like the way you said it, we try and just give you the facts and let you make your decisions, but hopefully we're all at the same starting point and can make decisions based on what we all know together. So I
have a safe winter.
I hope so, and let's have a little bit of snow for fun, but not too much snow that it breaks the bank again this year. So have a great January, everybody, and we'll be back sometime in February. So take care.
Take care.